Good evening, everybody. Today it is October the 16th. It is 9 p.m. Eastern, and we are in the Hive-Engine Decentralized Discord channel. It is a late on a Friday for most of the people stateside. It is early morning for the European crowd and the African crowd. And tonight we're really here to go try to get a discussion going about. Honestly, I think of this as leveling up Hive-Engine. This project's been around for 2 years, and we've done a lot of good. We've gotten a lot of tokens off the ground. We have fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. We have some of our off-the-shelf smart contracts that are becoming available, and the mining being the first one of those. We've gotten partway through creating a decentralized peer-to-peer node network for the back end of Hive-Engine, but it kind of stalled several months ago, and that was frustrating. Although I tend to think that the universe sends these at the appropriate time, and that good things will happen as a result later of delays. So I try not to get too frustrated. And now it might make more sense, because when Dan approached me and said, you know, we're thinking about 3Speak and how we could utilize something like this, it started making more sense that Hive-Engine isn't really just about Hive-Engine. It's about all of the apps in the ecosystem and providing a foundation where groups can participate and like a foundation to build off of. So what I'm envisioning, and this is in part inspired by Dan, who I'll cede the floor to in just a second, but I'm envisioning that we build a layer 2 system that allows more than one business or application or community to really become a part of it, to earn rewards by hosting servers and also pay rewards by hosting servers, and getting some action in form of governance and the ability to help run and decide how this network operates. We want to be careful about some of this because, you know, as we've seen not all that long ago, there are some serious financial consequences for getting this stuff wrong. And we just want to make sure that as we're going, we have the most experienced devs working on some of the core parts of this. So as I'm envisioning it, I'm seeing the Hive-Engine team, which has been working on this thing for I think it's 2 years, maybe even more now. I imagine us moving away from some of the business logic smart contracts that we have been working on, which are like pretty finite in scope and like manageable by a single person, to switching back to sort of more fundamental, real bottom layer stuff of just how the damn blockchain itself operates, or how this layer 2 operates, or how the witness system operates. So I see Cryptomancer moving from writing these business logic smart contracts to writing the peer-to-peer witness code and writing maybe some of the Ethereum integrations, because that's been a little bit troublesome. So sort of like the big, what we consider hard projects, I think they should go to the most experienced devs. But honestly, I can't really do that without some help, because, you know, we really need these business contracts to get new applications to build here. So if we're focused on the just the core backend, then it means that those smart contracts aren't being written, and that means that progress is really stalling, and that's not good for the ecosystem. So it is my hope that we can talk through how to write smart contracts here. Some of the smart contracts that we're targeting, Cryptomancer's put together sort of a guide of the best practice for that, and I'm here to ask this community to help us write those. And you know, what would it take for you to be willing to author that? You know, what kind of compensation for your time do you need? And so hopefully you can kind of look through some of these documents and see, you know, how much do you want to charge? How much do you think that you're kind of willing to donate some time, because this is more of a community project for the Hive ecosystem as a whole, of which we're all stakeholders. But the ultimate goal is we want to get more peer-to-peer stuff created. That means we need help writing smart contracts, and so I'm here to ask the community members to start thinking, could you write these contracts and go from there? Because if you can do that, we can work on the back end, and actually overall the development of this whole thing will be faster and stronger, because we'll have more people, more teams, more eyeballs, and honestly more smart contracts faster. And that means that we can start building more types of businesses here on chain on the second layer. So that's kind of how I see this stuff going. I want to pass the floor over to Dan. So Dan, how does that align with what you're thinking, and how do you see kind of 3Speak coming into this?
Yeah, so well, first off, hope everyone's all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
The vision would be just a multi-node system, something that all the projects can build a foundation on. So 3Speak's part in this would be to help donate some funds to development. Also, we're looking to build a tokenized storage system. And we don't want to use another blockchain. We want to use Hive. And if there's something that Hive can't do that other blockchain can do, my first question is, well, how do we get this to work on Hive? And it just so happens what I want to build for 3Speak can work on Hive. It just, we just need to, as you call it, upgrade Hive-Engine, which is in the best interest of every DApp and, Hive stakeholder is to have a robust decentralized sidechain that everyone can benefit from. The cool idea that we had when Agro and I was talking, Matt as well, Starkers, was instead of just one team building the sidechain and saying, okay, this is the governance token, this is how it goes down. I thought, or we thought it would be cool if, let's say we have the Speak token, we're willing to give off some inflation to the nodes. You have Agro with B. Let's say there's another community with another token. They were saying, hey, this is what we're willing to contribute. If you put our names on the board for governance, meaning our token's going to have some governance over the chain, we'll be willing to, either build in some inflation, or we have some kind of war chest, we're able to help support the node system. So if you envision, let's say we get a handful of projects willing to do this, each with their own tokens. We build this out. Now you have about 5 projects in governance of this one chain. Instead of one coin being paid to the node operators, they have a handful, which makes being a node on that chain highly sought after, because you're going to be getting more than just one token. So I just think overall it'd be really cool, because you'll have a side chain that is sort of owned by multiple communities in a way. When I say owned, it just means like their coin is actually has influence. They have natural skin in the game. So Agro and I wanted to come out and just say, okay, well, who's interested? What can you do? I found personally a lot of people have built something very similar. We aren't the only ones that wanted to get this done. There's a handful of people I could rattle off right now that have done code, similar projects. So instead of everyone working in silos, it'd be cool if we all just sort of came out in the open saying, this is what I have, put it on the table, and we kind of look around, see what we can do, sort of form like an A team, basically. It's probably going to be a nice chunk of change. I'm not saying 3Speak's going to be able to shoulder all of it, but we're definitely willing to get the momentum going and put a nice size donation up. And, hopefully we can get like a DAO proposal to cover the rest, something. But, I think the first step is to get the team in place, which Agro is going to be a big help with.
Cool. Cryptomancer, do you kind of want to walk through, maybe post your document in general, and then walk through some of the highlights of building on Hive-Engine and what it takes, and writing smart contracts, and what that might look like?
All right, sure. So I already put the link to my smart contract developers guide in general, so you guys can go there and check it out. And that guide is pretty much everything that any developer might need to get started quickly with the smart contract system from scratch. get the build environment up and running, and actually start developing with it. So that's the starting point. To develop smart contracts, basically any decent JavaScript developer can do it. It doesn't really take any special skills. It's just standard JavaScript. Uh, However, writing these things does require a bit of a paradigm shift in your thinking, because it's not like a standard web application or desktop application or things that you may be used to in the past. You have to think about it the right way. Mainly because the smart contract environment is really resource constrained. So you may be used to having basically unlimited memory or tons of processing power, or basically a lot of resources to do what you have to do. But when you think about these smart contracts, you kind of have to put yourself in the mindset of more what it was like in the earlier days of computing, where you really have to eke out the best performance that you can from your code. And you have to think about how to do things in a memory efficient way that doesn't waste space, and in a processing efficient way. Um, so the basic structure of these contracts, they're very similar to classes in standard object-oriented programming. So it's a chunk of code that lives in the sidechain, and you interact with them through a public interface that the contract makes available to the world. So each contract has a certain number of public actions that they make available, and these actions can be triggered by broadcasting custom JSON operations to the Hive blockchain. So say some account wants to make a token transfer. On the Hive-Engine website, you would just do your transfer, and then on the back end, that operation gets converted into custom JSON that triggers a smart contract action. So your Hive account broadcasts this custom JSON, and then the smart contracts node software is scanning all the blocks on Hive, and it detects this custom JSON that's formatted in a certain way, and it says, oh, I know this custom JSON is activating the transfer action on the token smart contract, and then it executes that smart contract in a sandboxed JavaScript virtual machine, and that will actually perform the transfer. So when these smart contracts are called, then the smart contract operation has a chance to modify the backend database storage behind the sidechain. And that database is a MongoDB, and it runs on the node. So every node that we have that runs the sidechain will have its own copy of this MongoDB database, and that maintains the state for the whole smart contract system. So each smart contract is able to have collections of information in this MongoDB, and each node will basically maintain its own database, and those databases will have exactly the same information. So that's part of the consensus, guaranteeing that all of the nodes have the same information. And you can use a publicly available API on any of the nodes to query that information and get data out of the database. The only way to modify data in the database is, of course, through the smart contracts. So you call a smart contract action, the smart contract does something that modifies the state in the database, and then you can see the results of that action. So for a token transfer, say, updating the state might mean taking a balance of token in one person's account and moving that to another person's account. So it updates numbers in the balance table. And you can imagine the smart contracts doing all sorts of different operations. So we have a mining contract, we have the fungible tokens contract, we have the NFT contract, we have a contract for an automated market maker. That's one of our newer ones. So each of these contracts within the ecosystem is responsible for performing one particular task and doing it very well. So it's a very modular design. we're aiming to continue building out that system with a number of other business functions. So we'd like to add an auction contract. We're going to add something called the pack manager, which allows you to have packs of NFT tokens very similar to the Splinterlands game, but more generalized. We're aiming to do some governance as well through NFTs, perhaps. So there's a whole number of various business contracts that we'd like to build out. And this guide that I've put together is basically everything you need to know to write those contracts. So I guess that's kind of it in a nutshell. One other thing that you have to be careful about is execution time. So, for instance, all of the contracts, when they execute, we have to be careful not to slow down the block processing. So you need to make sure that the contract actions can all run very quickly and be processed within a single block and have the results written back to the database. So that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about you have to be very cognizant of the performance impact and also memory utilization, since on-chain database storage is expensive and not unlimited. So you don't want your contracts to use more than their fair share of the system resources. And all of those considerations are talked about in my document. So there's a best practices section which discusses all the little nuances and things like that you have to be aware of as you're developing in order to write good smart contract code.
Cool.
So that's kind of my spiel.
I just got some feedback. First of all, okay, to be honest, I haven't really gone deep into the documentation he shared. But I understand what he explained about the whole system hinging on custom JSON ops, how that derives state. I've been having some thoughts on this, like way before I even really looked into Hive-Engine a lot. Personally, I've got some stuff going on, a bit more focus on some other stuff, trying to balance personal life and Hive life. But yeah. I wanted to know how do you use like a way to do you derive state of a token from okay, for example, this is just something I thought of a while back. If you post a JSON op that states how a token is defined and how it develops over a couple of number of blocks, to use a similar to extract out that information to say, the state of this token, is it developing over a certain number of blocks develop.
Can you be a bit more specific about what you mean by developing over a certain number of blocks?
Okay, say this idea I had, like if you post in a token initiation op, right, as some JSON, say this op posts this token. This token is gonna propagate over the next, on each block it adds 0.00 whatever percent inflation, just to define the properties of the token in the custom JSON op, so that initial JSON op defines the token's properties over time.
Okay, I see what you mean. So you're talking about something where there needs to be an action that happens, say, every block or every certain number of blocks, which evolves the state of the object over time.
Yeah, like if you say, let's say you post a custom JSON up and say this token is created now on this block, whatever, and we say um, on each block, maybe it's part of the consensus code, we have a value that says each block token, you know, inflates over 0.03% on or 0.0003% over each block, and kind of extract a state out of that as it
Okay.
goes. Yeah.
Yes, that is possible. If you look in my document, there's a section down towards the bottom, ticking actions in every block, which discusses that sort of thing. So we actually do have several contracts right now which do that. That's done through virtual transactions, which are triggered by the actual node software itself. So every block, the node software will check a database table and it will see if a certain condition is met. And if that condition is met, then this virtual transaction executes, which calls some smart contract action to update state. So that's possible. It's something that we like to try to keep to a minimum because we want blocks to process as quickly as they can. And if we have a whole bunch of these virtual transactions being done every block, then ultimately it's going to start slowing down the system. So we have to be really careful about doing that and restrict it to things that it's only absolutely necessary for. Also, right now, if you want to add a new virtual transaction, it's not possible to do it only with a smart contract update. It has to be done by actually putting a hook into the core node software and actually doing a full release of the core node software. So that obviously would be a difficult thing to do going forward once we have a whole bunch of witnesses running a whole bunch of nodes, because it'd basically be like a hard fork of the system. So to deal with that, one possibility is to make kind of like a generalized virtual transaction, which triggers a smart contract, and then that smart contract decides how it could be routed. So that contract could say, well, I know this is an inflation operation, so I'm going to trigger the inflation contract. Or I know this is some other type of mining operation, so I'm going to go trigger this other mining contract. And then we could provide a way through smart contracts that new actions could be registered for that. So that's one idea that would avoid having to do a core node software upgrade every time. But really, we want to try to keep these things to a minimum. We don't want people adding hundreds of different types of virtual transactions because that's
Yeah.
just really going to slow down the system.
Yeah, that makes and basic. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for this explanation. That really adds a lot of depth to um what I wanted to know. I also had another. Yep, yep. Yeah, I mean, from my side, I mean, I'm mostly versed in like Python development, and Python is only language that I'm really, really proficient in. Um, I've been focusing on that for a couple of months, uh, not months, maybe years, probably a year and a half. But um, I'm really open to like contributing to this project. On the sense of decentralization, like if it's making uh, servers that anyone can run a node that runs the same code that people can deterministically like derive a state that everyone shares and maybe come up with a way to uh, maybe I don't know, maybe this may be a stretch, cryptographically ascertain that everyone is running the same code and everyone is deriving the same state on token balances, on token uh, state, like how much each account owns and how much has been transferred and whatever the account history is. I mean, I think that's an important factor of this. If I can write some, yep, yep, yeah,
One thing I would say is even if you don't have so much JavaScript experience or you're coming from another language, that there's no reason that you can't learn and get familiar with it as you go along. When I first started working on the NFT contracts, it was more than a year ago now. I had very little JavaScript experience. The language itself was still a bit new to me, but I was able to get up to speed quickly because I had experience with other languages like C++ and Java that have a somewhat similar syntax. So you don't have to be an absolute expert to get started with this stuff. The
yep,
smart contract code is actually fairly plain JavaScript. It's not really too fancy. It's more learning the appropriate style guidelines and the way to think about smart contracts. That's what you'll pick up as you go along too.
yeah, yeah. I'm really open to like this is a side of Hive that I haven't looked into as much as I would have wanted to, but I've got a lot of ideas and like the whole idea of a token for token state being an emergent property, uh, and initiating block action and subsequent block transactions made by other Hive accounts. That the whole idea is just mind blowing. Yeah, I'm open to just learning more about. Yeah, one other thing I wanted to just kind of put out there was
Well, can you put some headphones?
sorry. Oh, cool. One thing I wanted to put out there was that if we can get a really stable base, like, if we can get code base that's really stable, that people can, rely on, say, we've got maybe 4, 5, 6 different nodes running this code, and each and every one of them comes to a deterministic output on the state of the balances of every token. I mean, that would just kill it totally. That's like the base application layer of all token systems. If you know and trust the token balance is correct and everyone, yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, definitely.
I can talk a little bit about it. I'm not super familiar with that code. I reviewed it a little bit, but not the complete system. So the P2P code that we have right now was originally written by Harpagon, and he actually got it to a state where we had a test net set up with several different witnesses running nodes, and we were testing the consensus mechanism and making sure that consensus was maintained. And there were some problems that we ran into during that testing. I think there were some nodes that would sometimes fork and go off on their own, and there was some witnessing scheduling that wasn't working quite right. But it was almost there. Harpagon had almost worked all the kinks out of it. I think it's 90% of the way there and ready to go. It just needs that extra little push to kind of retest the whole thing and make sure that it actually works before we go live with it. And there's two parts to the P2P system. So there's some part in the core node software, which is that link that Agra just posted. And then there's a smart contract that goes with it called the witness contract. And that P2P code in the core node is responsible for calling the actions on the witness contract and coordinating its behavior. The witness contract handles things like setting up a rotating schedule of witnesses and making sure that each witnesses are signing the blocks that they're supposed to be signing. And it also handles sending out the pay to the witnesses as each of the blocks get signed. I can't really go into it any more in depth than that, other than to say, yeah, those two files are the heart of it, and that's what we need to make sure is working before we can go live. One more thing first. I just noticed that Ali H had a question. He says, I think most of these contracts are indeed self-explanatory, but a little more description would really help. So we actually do have a very thorough documentation on all of the main smart contracts. Let me just grab a link here. You can get there from this documentation that I posted. If you go to, let's see, one moment.
While he's looking into that, I just want to state my intentions on native ads. Like the whole vision overview, the whole thing would be to have valuable, reliable, and uh, deterministic tokens that are pegged to the attention value of whatever community, you know, signs into native ads. I'm not sure how many of you guys have really looked into the documentation put out, but the vision will be to create an attention token, sorry, an attention economy based on attention token. And it really doesn't matter, you know, how the tokens are created, but how the tokens states are derived and if they are dependable or not. And then how they plug into this attention economy, because with native ads, I would be allowing virtually any website, any community, any dApp to just offer up ad space and put a price, an initial price, yes, but then it'll be deterministic on the market value. Like if I have a website and it has 1 million, people just going through in and out on that, I can offer up spaces that be really valuable to whatever token I assign to that website. And so that's the kind of like angle I'm mostly focusing on now. And yep, 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 Yeah. Yep, yep. And just to like add a little bit of context to that, like uh, I'm planning on making it more than just ad, because I know the term ad has been, yeah, you can say maybe it's been a bit overused and kind of focused on small spectrum of use cases, but I'm planning to make it more like an attention economy where people, you know, uh, say you're a content creator and you've got like 100,000 followers, you can come up and say, I'm hosting a paid Ask Me Anything event. You know, people can interact during that event. Say it's a paid event, and the highest comment or the highest bid is to ask me anything that they want to answer, and I answer that, and I give my time, dedicating me 2 or 3 hours, and that time uh, broadcast out to the market. Whoever has the highest bid can ask me anything. That could be, uh, yeah, yep, yep, yeah, yep, yeah, yep, yeah,
Yeah, you pretty much said it. Just, don't be shy. Anybody that feels like they can contribute, this is the time. Really rather this be even if we had all the money in the world, we'd rather this be a grassroots community effort. I think that this would be a really neat thing to see developers and community members come together and build this thing. And I just think it's the most important thing we can do as a community. So I thank everybody for coming out tonight. Cheers.